I wanted to really give a synopsis of what we went through, and then do a meditation and see what we have from there. We went through 14 chapters in this book, and it's pretty profound stuff. For most of you, I think the jhana and this concentration practice is probably something that maybe some of you have never heard of before. In most traditions, well, I would gather to say that just about all traditions, except for a few, the meditation practices involve mindfulness, or what is called vipassana, these types of inquiry, not into the self, but also into our world at large, really. So mindfulness and concentration are the two elements. When we combine these two, we can find these two things in just about all meditations. And the concentration part has to be an element that's within all meditations. Otherwise, meditation is just, it's not going to work. We're not engaged enough. So the concentration has to be there, but eventually the mindfulness drops out, and then the concentration can be worked on by itself. That doesn't mean that mindfulness shouldn't be added later on. Actually, in the Buddhist teachings, the Buddha went through these progressions. He went through mindfulness, and he went through the jhanas that we're studying here. And then on his way out, then he used that concentration to look at and use mindfulness in a deeper way. Just very, very contemplative and very deep concentration with the mindfulness. So when we look at, I kind of talked about this on Wednesday night, but for those that you were here for the meditation on Wednesday night, you have to bear with me because I'm going to go through these steps kind of briefly, because we don't have much time to really dwell on all of them. But the what I call the 24 steps of meditation, and they start with basic, almost what I would say basic mindfulness, is where we take a look at the body. We always start with the body, and we go through these. We start with the body. We go through these progressions as far as we want. And we can go through different jhanas, and then when we come out, we come out the same way. So we start with the body, and if we were brand new to meditation, the teacher might say, pay attention to the breath, or notice the breath. And that's really the first spark of the practice of meditation. Before that, we set the intention, and we might do a metta, or some kind of appreciative practice, something to open the heart. And that should be considered part of the practice as well. But I'm talking about when we settle in and we actually get engaged, and we might likely close our eyes and think in terms of meditating. So we bring our attention to the body, we notice the breath, and then beyond that, we notice the breath as it comes into the body and as it leaves the body. And all of a sudden we find ourselves engaged in doing this practice. Eventually we notice that this breath affects the body in a certain way. The breath becomes comfortable and relaxed, and the body follows suit. It gets very comfortable and relaxed. And we start noticing that there's something happening here. And then we notice that we can use the body. We can just kind of mentally relax the body, and it relaxes the breath, and everything kind of follows suit. We notice sensations in the body, maybe subtle pains, subtle ailments, stiffness, or maybe even, hopefully, we notice some relaxation, some looseness of the muscles and that kind of thing. So we go through this practice, and we look at the body without judgment, hopefully, Because that's a major element, or part of mindfulness, is not to be judgmental over this stuff that's happening. And these sensations of the body, we notice how it's connected to the mind, right? We look at the body and we see, oh, there's a pleasant feeling and there's an unpleasant feeling happening directly within the body. But it's really the mind that is noticing this stuff, you know. So we kind of have this body-mind. We can almost separate the two, right? Because there's a noticing, there's a witnessing that the body is here, and we're noticing the breath, and so we can, this what is called Vedana, these feelings, we notice how they can be determined and kind of separated into pleasant and unpleasantness. And there's also neutral feelings. But these, and we relate them to the sensations of the body. And when we notice these feelings in such a way that we don't have to identify with them so much, that they're just feelings, that they're just arising, just like the sensations of the body, like a pain in the knee is coming up. And we notice it, but we don't necessarily identify it, and that softens it. It softens that pain because we're not contracting around it. And we notice the same thing in feelings of the mind, these pleasant and unpleasant things that are coming up associated with the senses. Not only the kinesthetic body, but also what we see or visualize if our eyes are closed, what we hear and smell, taste, and even what we think. Because we notice that we can have a pleasant thought and an unpleasant thought. So the Buddha was kind enough to divide these feelings into just those three simple areas: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So when we use mindfulness in such a way that we can see these things in just those three simple categories, it simplifies everything to such a great detail that it's really easy to stay engaged, or it can be really easy to stay engaged with what's happening. So oftentimes in the West, we think of feelings as, you know, I'm feeling blue, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy, but those aren't the kind of feelings that we're talking about. Those are actually states. Those are mind states, all right? And actually, that's the next area that we get into. So I'm going through these 24 areas, these 24 stages. I already went through 8 of them. I went through the 4 areas of the body, the long breath and short breath, and how the breath connects with the body, and then how the body conditions the breath. Feelings, how this piti, or this pleasantness, arises, but it's so energetic that we can't hang on to it for very long, and then the sukha sets in. And within any one of these areas, our concentration can grow stronger and stronger and stronger. But primarily what we're talking about is momentary concentration. Remember momentary concentration, where we have momentary concentration and then more of a sustained concentration, and then jhana. Okay, so most of this is just the momentary concentration that we're talking about at this point. So we go through these different feelings, and how these feelings, these pleasant feelings, condition the body, and also how the body can condition these feelings. And the primary thing is to remember that the feelings are pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and they're related to all 5 senses, including thought. Okay. And then I briefly mentioned mind states. That's the next area of mindful meditation, or vipassana, is looking at the mind states. How the states of just understanding what the states are is actually the first step. It's actually the 9th step of the meditation of anapanasati or satipatthana meditation, is seeing mind states for what they are. We could, And if we wanted to be mindful, and some of you that have worked with me before have heard this, that we can ask ourselves right now, what state are we experiencing? Is there, and it could be anything. It could be whatever mood or emotion that we're experiencing right now. And there's always a mind state that's present. So if we want to be instantly mindful, we just ask ourselves, what state am I experiencing as this mind-body apparatus? Happiness, contentment, sadness, concentration. It could be even something as love or restlessness, worry, doubt, fear, anger, desire, greed. I could go on and on. And we just think in terms of what is happening with this situation right now. And chances are we notice that when we identify it, it changes because everything is completely impermanent. Especially the body, the feelings, these sensations, and these mind states are impermanent. They're always rising and falling. So whatever mind state you had when you came through that door is likely completely different now. And it will be different when you walk out that door. But the fact is that it's changing right now. It's like liquid, it's very fluid. It's like the chemicals in the body are changing these states. And that's true, it's actually true with these jhanas too. They're very impermanent. But we go through them and we experience them and we come out of them as well. The more we practice them, the more we can stay with them. These levels of concentration, but they're very impermanent. So we understand these states, we understand how they work, and then we start looking at how the mind can be gladdened, these states of happiness and these states of concentration that we've been talking about for the last 9 weeks or 8 weeks. And also the state of liberation, being completely free from identifying with these thoughts. Probably one of the miracles of mindfulness is realizing that we don't have to identify with any of this. We can just see it for what it is. That's the non-judgmental aspect. No judgment, no commentary, no decision, just seeing everything for what it is, not being involved, not taking it a personal, emotional interest in it. And that's what changes everything for us in the area of mindfulness. It's very popular in today's world to use it as a therapeutic, cognitive kind of thing because it's so powerful. It's so healing for us to see things arise and fall without grasping onto it. That's really it in a nutshell, but we can, in the next course, we'll be going deeper and deeper into the meaning behind mindfulness. So then when we get into, we talked about the body, feelings, mind states, and then there's the dharmas or the mind objects, which can encompass many things, but oftentimes it's looked at as insight and seeing the things that arise and all these mental objects, seeing them as they are points to the fact that they are indeed impermanent. And that impermanence can be understood at an intellectual level, but when we really contemplate it and really get into it with this concentration that gets deeper for us, we penetrate it at a level that it changes everything for us. And primarily, we see that that these objects that we formerly thought was going to provide happiness for us out there, if they're so impermanent, we realize that it's not going to work for us. And that's not, when we first hear that, people get kind of sad and start to wonder what is this all about then? What are we doing here? Why are we born? What's going on? But it points to the idea that there's a certain amount of freedom, understanding that the happiness isn't out there, that it comes from inside. because we're fooled again and again and again. We're like children. I'm not picking on you individually, but we are pretty much, as a human race, we're like children in a candy store. We go, that's my pleasure. This is going to provide lasting happiness for me. But when we get a little wiser, we understand that it isn't, And we train children that way. We say, that's not going to provide lasting happiness for you. They want something for Christmas that they're convinced that it's going to provide happiness for the rest of their lives, And as intellectual adults, we know that's not going to happen. But yet, we go out and buy that fancy sports car or, dream of this thing that's going to provide happiness for us. And it doesn't stick. So we see the impermanence of everything. We see that it actually leads to this desire that Buddha talked about is directly connected to thinking that this happiness is going to be provided through these material things. Not even material things, but thoughts as well. So we start to find a way to disconnect a little bit from the idea that our happiness is going to be found out there, where the idea of these objects become very selfless. And then we start relating that to the body. This is all mindfulness now. And then we understand that the body and all these things are just simply borrowed, and they have to be given back sometimes. So what is there to actually grasp onto? What is there to hang on to anyway? And that's 16 steps that I went through, kind of blurrily. That's not even a word, but I kind of connected them all together. If you wanted to find out more information, you could go to Meditation Learning Center, and there's I think it says articles and teachings or something like that, and you can click on there. And the very first one that comes up is the 24 steps, 24 levels sequence, maybe, step-by-step sequence, I'm not sure what it's called, of meditation. And that's the first 16. And then there's 8 more that we've been working with here, right? We get into Jhana. And so we're getting out of that momentary concentration into that more sustained type of concentration. We get into the first jhana, we realize that there's applied thought, sustained thought, this happiness, piti and sukha, one-pointedness. So we're sitting in this first jhana, and there's still thoughts, and hopefully we've experienced this deep concentration. We all have, but we haven't been able to control it up until we started this course, right? I mean, that's how it's supposed to be laid out anyway. So we have this first level of jhana, and there's still thoughts. And then we get into the second level, we notice that the thoughts are subsiding, and there's happiness. This profound happiness, actually, is the main factor. It's almost too strong of vibrations, and it's like as Bhante Ji explained, it's like a child with a new toy. So we have to let that go. We get into these deeper levels of concentration, and we get into the third jhana, where we let that happiness subside. That energetic happiness, and just a blissful contentment that lingers. And then we get into the fourth jhana, and we realize that even the happiness isn't necessary. And it's just sustained concentration, one single pointedness, primarily equanimity. Because this pleasantness and this unpleasantness, in the form of feelings that we talked about in mindfulness, we realize it doesn't have to be there. Actually, there's not even that realization. It just falls away naturally, just like falling into these different layers of jhana, concentration. But all of this is material. It's all material. Even the thoughts, like when we dream of something, it's a material thought. Material trees, material people, material body. Even when we're flying, I don't know about you guys, but I like to fly in my dreams. I just kind of push off the ground and I can kind of fly over the trees and stuff, especially if there's danger, you know. Is anybody relating to that? Yeah. But it's all material. I'm pushing off a material street into above the material trees and flying away from this material tiger that's trying to tear apart this material body or whatever's happening in the dream, right? We can even be on retreats in dreams and things like that. It's amazing. But it's still material. The next 4 jhanas that we talked about are rupa jhanas. Rupa is material. Arupa is the non-material jhanas, and that's when we talked about the experience of, we use the analogy of floating in space without actually seeing any planets, not like the Hubble, not seeing planets, not seeing stars, not seeing any of this, just suspended in space without materialism related to it. We also use the analogy of throwing a blanket over our material world and seeing what's on the outside of that blanket. Just imagine gathering all the materialism, everything that we've ever known as a material world, and throwing this material blanket over it, and what's on the outside of that. And it can only be experienced. To put words into it just clutters it up, but we're attempting here. Then the next arupa jhana is the idea that the space that we're talking about is just there's just some awareness of it. That's all that's happening. Or this is being conscious of space. And it's not space itself, it's just consciousness coming from this stuff. So it's awareness, watching awareness. That's the first time I've ever seen that in a book. I've been reprimanded for using one word to describe another word, but Bhante G did it in our book. So now I can do that as much as I want, right? Awareness, watching awareness. Consciousness, being conscious of consciousness. So it's this more subtle layers of these jhanas. The next arupa jhana, the third arupa jhana, is emptiness. It's something that we hear about in Buddhism a lot. We hear about it a lot in the Mahayana tradition, about emptiness. Having a experience of emptiness, or having a realization of emptiness. But it's actually one of the jhanas, and it's like that in all traditions. Emptiness without form, so there's not even anybody being conscious. The fourth arupa jhana is neither the realm of neither perception or non-perception. There's no perceiving of emptiness, no perceiving of space, there's no perceiving of awareness, and there's no non-perception. So it's so subtle that we can't say that I am not, that there's an I that is not perceiving or not perceiving. There's nothing like that there. So we're using these different words to describe these more subtle areas of our practice, arupa jhanas. Using words to describe the formless, the immaterial. It's tricky. It's tricky to do, but all we can do is use these analogies so that when it happens, that we can kind of recognize it. And if you're in a retreat, you would a jhana retreat would last months, and you would report to the teacher maybe once a week, maybe every several days, and then you would express your experiences that you're having, and then the teacher would tell you that you've experienced a particular jhana, perhaps, and if it was a good teacher, he'd do it in such a way to certainly not allow you to get excited about it, or to think that it's some wonderful feat or anything like that, but he would just say that this is what's happening and keep practicing, basically. Because if there's any one of the jhanas is a really good place to get stuck. because you can grasp onto it just like anything else, because it can be very pleasurable. And the rest of the book talks about the supra-mundane levels of the practice. And through all of this practice, what we're doing is eradicating the hindrances. But when in the supra-mundane area, we're eradicating the fetters. The fetters were these deep roots that have been a part of this stuff for surely this life, and depending on our belief, our past lives as well. So there's really, really deep things that we don't even understand, don't know that they're there. We go through these different levels of the supra-mundane jhanas. They're related to spiritually in how many rebirths that we would have through our, based on our understanding of these hindrances and these fetters. The very first fetter is the identification of the self. And so there is still a self. We still use the I, my, me, mine, but we don't take it seriously at all. We understand that there's nothing really here to call an I. And this is a very deep realization that can really, really shake a person up. Sometimes even in a negative way, because it seems like we've been seeking and searching all of our lives, and all of a sudden we come to this place where we found something. But that doesn't mean always mean that the seeking has stopped. And actually, if a person thinks that they're done, that is another good place to get stuck. That the self, this realization of the self is so profound that a person feels like they've completely woken up or something. So in the very first supra-mundane jhana, there's the realization that the self is no longer as prominent as we thought it was. Doubt falls away, all forms of doubt, and the attachment to rituals, rites and rituals in our practice. So if we can imagine doubt falling away, that we, there has been some kind of a doubt in our practice and our understanding all along, and that has fallen away, it just opens up the door for us. It's like those big doors in back just saying, come on through. If we can see any kind of lingering shadow of doubt in our practice, in our lives, it completely allows us to be completely limitless beings, or completely limitless entities in what we do and what we practice, what we think, all of our endeavors, especially in our understanding of these deeper understandings that we're talking about through this concentration in meditation. So the self fades away, the doubts fall away. Attachments to rites and rituals is an area that falls away with the doubt. Any one of these can fall away at any particular time, but in order to get through the what is called stream enter, all three of these have to fall away. And being attached to rites and rituals is the idea that sometimes people have a belief that if they light 3 sticks of incense in the morning and do some bowing or a prayer or something, that is their practice. And hopefully we know, through our meditation that there's more to it than that. And that can be a sticky point for some people, the rites and rituals. Part of that came about because Buddha was born a Hindu, and in Hinduism there's a great deal of rites and rituals that the Buddha himself personally thought that they weren't necessary. And so he saw that as a fetter that was carried on from life to life. And then there's an area of once returner in the tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, as far as rebirths are considered. A stream enterer could be reborn a number of times. A once returner would be born once if he sees through the fear and anger and the desire completely. These are also hindrances, but these are deep-rooted fetters. To let go of all desire and all fear and anger, all these aversions. And once that is seen through to such a level that there would be only one rebirth for a person in this world. Even subtler than that, if all these 5 fetters are completely eradicated, there wouldn't be a rebirth. There's 5 more fetters to kind of wrap this up, to take us through all. We went through the 24 areas of steps of meditation, and now there's these eradicating these fetters. 5 more of them are the idea that we want to be reborn in another realm, like there's the body dying, and then there's just enough of a desire, still a desire left in us, that we want to be reborn as in a God realm or in a heavenly realm, or or particularly in a worldly realm. These are 2 of the different feathers. So if we want to be reborn as in a better situation in this world, that's enough to cause a rebirth for us. If we want to be reborn as a God, or somebody that has these clear understandings, even to be reborn as a bodhisattva in the Mahayana tradition, that's enough for a rebirth. And that's a part of the bodhisattva vows in the Mahayana tradition, Buddhist Mahayana. And the other fetters have to do with a very, very fine inkling of conceit. And it's the idea that we've gone through all these practices and done all of these things, and even the feeling that we wish other people to have these realizations that I have had is just a fine, very, very fine conceit is enough to prevent us from being fully awakened at the time of at when we die, and could cause another rebirth for us. And I think I use the analogy of seeing hair in the soup. Like we're eating soup and we find a hair in there, and we realize that it's kind of disgusting, but then we realize it's our hair, it's not so bad. That fine of a conceit. And you go, oh, that's my hair, that's not so bad. And you finish eating your soup. Something that we, things are so fine that we don't think about them in a particular way. And then I'm just going to rattle off the last 5 of the fetters here. All material existence evaporates. All immaterial existence evaporates, being born in a heavenly realm. Conceit evaporates, what we just discussed. Restlessness evaporates. There's complete peace, and then ignorance evaporates. Ignorance in the understanding of all of this that we've been talking about. And with all of this, to be in this way, there's a lot of people that agree with me that that we have to really understand the self, how the self gets involved in this, the ego, and to be able to eliminate any kind of doubt that we have. Not what I would call blind faith, but just a doubt that there is a possibility of awakening, that there is a possibility of getting beyond the suffering that is such a conditioning in our life. Because if any kind of doubt can derail us, can derail us from the practice. If our doubt is so strong, we won't even meditate. And if our doubt is very, very weak, it's still prohibiting us to be on the path 100%. So if we ask ourselves what doubt, why aren't we content? Why aren't we have this feeling of completeness that is really our true nature? We should ask ourselves, what kind of doubt is there? Because we're talking about this practice of meditation, and there are other ways to wake up. There are other ways to get through this, and through this wisdom, this deep understanding, the very last fetter, ignorance evaporates. And there are people with such wisdom, such clarity, that their meditation is very, very easy. They go through all these stages very easily, and it's just because of their wisdom. They see it so clear. And the only way they can do that is without the doubt. Their wisdom just goes right through that doubt. The other way to go through that doubt is through faith. And again, not blind faith, but faith in that, just a belief, just a strong belief that this is it, this works. Goes through, no problem with the meditation, no problem with eradicating any of the fetters, just strong faith. And then the other way is through the practice of concentration. So there's actually three ways. There's still meditation involved, but not as much meditation as it takes a lot of people. So wisdom, faith, and concentration are the practice. And of course, a big part of all this is just being moral and being good people, not letting any the immorality get in our way. That's going to provide some doubts for us, and that's going to provide or have some ego that'll arise, these desires. And in this way, we can all of the teachings come together. The Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, how to go through these 16 steps of the Anapanasati and the Satipatthana, the mindfulness, and the 8 Jhanas, and how they work with the 4 Rupa Jhanas, or the eradicating these fetters that we're talking about. The teachings become very, very simple to understand because they all intertwine. Wisdom, faith, morality, concentration.